what we're talking about is a mechanism of tyranny that centralizing power, giving it into a single hand or a small group of hands. That power then is used to oppress people in various ways. It's why the churches and the pastors need to be together. We need to be united. We need to be engaged prayerfully, biblically, and make sure that we're holding our own government accountable to the proper standards of its authority limitations given by God and given by the Constitution. Welcome to the Christian Citizen, part of the ministry of U.S. Pastor Council. We take head-on the mission of restoring godly citizenship as an effective ministry of the local Bible-believing pastor and church. Man calls it politics, but God calls it ministry, and our mission of, by, and for pastors is to bring a united biblical voice to the critical issues of our day. Scripture speaks to all issues impacting lives, and so should our pulpits. Join us for today's program. Hi, I'm Dave Welch. I'm the founder and president of the U.S. Pastor Council based in Houston, Texas. We're an organization of, by, and for pastors to bring a united biblical voice to the social, cultural, moral issues of the day and our public policy and governance. And the Christian Citizen podcast and our latest episode here are to deal with frontline issues that help encourage and empower our pastors to speak to the pulpit as well as engage our congregations. Today, we're going to talk about an overarching issue that has international implications, but local application. Because sometimes we tend to look at things in parts and pieces instead of the whole. As it were, we miss the forest for the trees. And one example that we're going to talk about today is just the whole framework of tyranny. Too often, we're shocked when we see government officials exercising arbitrary power. Of course, the term of the day is weaponizing. We've seen in our own time and era right now, our justice system from the federal level often on down to the local level, weaponized against innocent citizens rather than being used to execute justice. All of those things are acts of tyranny, fundamentally the abuse of governing power. As we have said many times in the past, power, that authority, comes directly from God, and it has a purpose, and it has a limited reason to exist, and it's to be executed wisely and justly. Then Scripture speaks to that. But today we're going to talk a little about a couple of specific examples of how this plays out. First one here, there's an article, and we see the headline here: Nicaragua forces 1,500 church and civil society groups to close. And of course, this is Nicaragua. Nicaragua is a historic trouble spot. For those of us that are old enough, we remember the old clashes in the 80s of the Sandinistas and the Contras. And of course, all the issues that happened both here and internationally during those years and then has ever since. Part of the question is, who in Nicaragua is the issue here? And as has been the case since those years, it is Daniel Ortega, who is once again president. According to Wikipedia biography, those of you who recall back then, he was a radical leftist implementing those policies, which really brought about the rebellion of the Contras and others pushing back against that. His radical policies were shifted over some years, but he also is very aggressive against the church. In 2022, Ortega reassumed repression of the church and has imprisoned prelate Rolando Jose Alvarez Lagos and has driven others out of the country along the way since that time. And this has been part of the problem that we have of tyrants across the world. It's interesting, this article talks about the fact that he assumed authority again in 2021. He claimed a fifth term in 2021. So essentially declares himself to be the head of the government again. So what we're talking about is a mechanism of tyranny that centralizing power, giving it into a single hand or a small group of hands. That power then is used to oppress people in various ways. And of course, that being said, in terms of Nicaragua and what's happening right now, when seizing power, oppressing churches, nonprofits, ultimately the people, arbitrarily imprisoning clergy and others who may be, for some reason, an opponent of the regime. This is happening there. It's happening elsewhere around the world, as we well know. But what about here? This is America, right? And one of the things that we tend to look at is how do we make a difference and what's happening really around on our own watch. And here in Harris County, Texas, fortunately, currently the county government is truly operated by Marxist leftists who are both corrupt and incompetent under the county judge Lena Hidalgo, Commissioner Rodney Ellis, who's the ward boss of the team. So the socialist policies have been flowing from there, as well as just the corruption since that group has had the majority of the votes on Commissioner's Court. What we see happening now, process that continues to occur into this. Now, some of these things, though, are just the natural flow of the escalation of the size and scope of government. And churches need to be aware of this because, again, today we had gotten another call from a church who had a visit by a fire marshal or fire inspector around a certain incident or a certain regulation that has been adopted in Harris County now. Every church, as a public facility, has to have fire inspections, safety inspections, and meet those code regulations for safety purposes. And that means fire extinguishers, exits, all those kinds of things to assure the safety of the people. What we've had now is a situation where the fire code has been modified. So in Harris County, Texas, they updated the fire code going into effect in 2022 to include this new provision. You'll see the framework of this code says it includes a regulation over places of assembly. And you'll see the places of assembly. It says requires an operational permit. So that's not an occupancy permit. That's an operational permit. To permit to operate into this category is required to operate in a place of assembly. This permit requirement shall include, but is not limited to, any location that allows service and consumption of alcohol on premises, regardless of the determined maximum occupant load. Now, what's fascinating about this, of course, is that, of course, then becomes what's a place of assembly, and what we go down to look at is a definition. Scroll up to the top. The assembly group includes amusement arcades, art galleries, bowling alleys, community halls, courtrooms, dance halls, exhibition halls, funeral parlors, so forth and so on, down this list, and museums, places of religious worship. So what does that mean? The places of assembly include places of religious worship that now require this operational permit and its fee. So now churches that have already met all of their safety codes and they've had those signed off, they have the affirmations of those posted as are required. And now, in addition to that, they've already proven they're safe, they've met those standards. In order to occupy and operate in those premises, in order to have the assemblies in that place, hold worship services, you have to pay for another permit and apply for this permit to operate. And the distinction there may seem to be vague unless you really stand back and understand what's at play here. You got the building. The fire inspector has come. They've gone through your building. They've checked off the checklist. Yes, all those things are in order. Your entrances, your exits, fire extinguishers, all those things. Again, sprinklers if required by code. And that's there. That's on your wall. You're good to go. Except now, you're not good to go anymore. In Harris County, churches are now, with those all in place, saying you have to also now apply for permits. A permit. Permit is permission. Let's not forget this. So they're having to go to county government and apply for a permit, for permission to operate, to do their business, to do church in the church, and have to pay a fee to do so. Now, does anybody see a problem with this? Now, is this the camel's nose? Well, let's think back a couple of years. Did anybody remember this thing called COVID and COVID shutdowns, executive orders issued by county officials? Others that told churches you have to shut down. And of course, many churches simply said, we don't work for the government. The government has no jurisdiction about when we assemble. We are required by our God to not forsake the gathering together of the saints and to fellowship together. So we are going to meet. We don't need your permission. So here, once again, we have a regulation slipped in quietly in the dark of night into the fire code in a seemingly innocuous way. But now we've already had a handful of churches contact us that the county is quietly moving out to enforce this provision. Say, you've been here for years, you've met all your safety inspections, but you can't do church after the 30 days elapses if you don't fill out this paperwork, pay for this fee, and apply for this operational permit to do business. So we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. And now here's the caveat in this. This clause that we're talking about, these places of assembly, is included in the International Fire Code, established and used all over the world. Cities all across America just grab this thing and drop it in as a template. They just adopt it as it is the case. So in many situations, individual commissioners, for example, they don't read this whole thing. Legislators and others don't read the whole bills. They may have somebody review some of it, but the devil's in the details. So here we go. an entirely new fire code, an updated fire code provided at the international level, international fire code, given to a county. County just says, we're just like for years, we're adopting this one again this year, but it's got these new little provisions in it. And guess what? That gives the county jurisdictional authority to say you can't do church. So here we go. And this is part of what we're calling out to our churches. This is why we can't be asleep at the switch. And local governance matters. Who we elect matters. Now, we are going to challenge this. We're going to go to our commissioners and raise this issue, make sure it's front and center of our concerns about this. And we will be requesting an exemption for houses of worship from this provision in this code. Now, whether we'll get it or not by a vote on the front end, we'll see. We're going to make that case. But this is why we have to pay attention to what's going on, because all of a sudden these things happen. And a lot of churches are just going to comply with it. They'll think, oh my gosh, that's what we have to do again. And they just slowly, piece by piece, give away their freedom without thinking through exactly what they're doing and yielding the jurisdiction of the state over the church. So this isn't an issue of rebelling against proper authority. This is saying what Jesus' requirement was and mandate when he said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, render to God what is God's. Okay, we don't mix the two. Do not give to Caesar what belongs to God. So we'll be following up with more information about this. This is an ongoing and frankly new issue that we're pursuing. But the tyranny and the centralization of authority and the work to seize control, to silence the church, is not new at all. Once again, it's why the churches and the pastors need to be together. We need to be united. We need to be engaged prayerfully, biblically, and make sure that we're holding our own government accountable to the proper standards of its authority limitations given by God and given by the Constitution. Stay with us. Keep following us. We'll keep you updated. God bless. As we conclude another enlightening episode of the Christian Citizen Podcast, we want to share a mission that resonates with our values. The U.S. Pastor Council, a beacon of courage, unity, and faith, is calling on you to partner with us. This pastor-led ministry, deeply rooted in biblical principles, aims to empower pastors and their congregations across racial and denominational lines to impact our culture and community through concerted prayer and effective action. Your support and donations can help us build strong, functioning teams of pastors in every corner of our cities, creating a grassroots network that could truly make a difference. Together, we can bring about Christ-centered change in our communities, provide resources for pastors, and connect with our leaders. This is more than just a donation. It's an opportunity to be part of a movement, to answer a call that echoes across the plains of Texas and even coast to coast. It's a chance to unite under a common cause and make a real impact. So we urge you, our listeners, to donate today and join us in our mission to bring about true transformation. Together, we can answer the call. Visit us at uspastorcouncil.org. That's uspastorcouncil.org. Thank you for being a part of this journey.